welcome once again to our weekly SonRise Project call, where it's always a safe and shame free space for conversation and community and healing our families and really starting with ourselves. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Whew, okay, it's been quite a morning, and we were chatting a little bit before we started about sometimes, life is lifing, and it is for all of us. I'm so excited to have back with us this morning by popular demand, Alycia Johnson. She was here with us just about a month ago, and so many people said, "Can you please come back? Can you please come back? Can you please come back?" And she said yes with graciousness. So she's here with us again this morning. And let me tell you, if you're new and don't know who she is, let me tell you a little bit about who Alycia is. Alycia is a wife and mother of two, age 28 and 26. As she puts it, she's missed honor roll assemblies, cussed at her children, lied about many things, cheated many times, zigged when she should have zagged, laughed when she should have cried, broken promises, and dishonored commitments. However, despite all her shortcomings, she has discovered a unique relationship with God that has helped her to heal her marriage. We heard all about that last time, which was so incredibly beautiful. Return to complete a degree after 20 years, create a home that is welcoming to all. In fact, that's what her shirt says today, and interpret dreams and hear the voice of God daily. She's become a master of listening to the rhythm of life and journaling for power and transformation. Spending time in Alicia's presence ignites our passion to live the full gift of life that God has given us and helps us come to terms with that. And she says, in God's economy, nothing is ever wasted. It is Alicia's desire to help everyone identify what God is calling them to do. Everyone has a unique purpose, and her mission is to share with all of us the beautiful secrets that lay right before our eyes. And so this morning, good morning, Alycia. Thank you for coming back so soon.
Good
Tell
morning.
us what your shirt says. That's the first thing I saw this morning when I saw you.
Well, my brother-in-law, my sister gave this to me. It says, "Everyone is welcome here." So just has all of that.
Yes. All of the
Yeah.
hands. It makes me smile. I saw that when we popped on a little bit ago. And so thank you for being here. You were so incredible last month when you shared your story, your journey of transformation, how you got over and healed your marriage after multiple cheating episodes, all of that, which was just incredible and beautiful, powerful story. And at the end of our conversation, something you said, we all said, we need to talk about that more. You said, our biggest casualties are often our children. And that's what you said right before we had to end. And so I want to talk about that today. That's our topic for today. It's how we often, as parents, create casualties with our children because of our fears, our need for control, our unresolved challenges or hurts or traumas, and generational trauma that we talked about. So I want to first say welcome and thank you for being here again. And I want to open up with you, for people that might be new today, a little snapshot summary of your journey. And then I want to really lean into that conversation around how your choices impacted your children who are now 28 and 26. So I'll turn it
Mhm.
over to you.
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here. I guess to kind of sum up the last time we were together, just to spare people all of the the details. My life was a mess. My marriage was a mess. My finances were a mess. My parenting was a mess. And God took us through the process, a 10-year process of healing our marriage. And it took the course of many adulterous affairs, psych ward visit, just just the whole a gamut of different dysfunctions. But in grand God style, God healed our marriage. In I know the date was like 2014, so God healed our marriage in 2014. And so that kind of segues into today's conversation because it was actually the weekend that God healed our marriage. It was so profound. Like when you're able to like sit back and connect the dots, you
Mm-hmm.
realize how can I put it, how purposeful God is and just how um perfect God's timing is. So what I mean by this is that the weekend that our marriage was healed, the very next weekend was the weekend our son kind of went off the rails. And so God
Mm-hmm.
healed our marriage in enough time, in the nick of time, if you will, so that we were able to come together and move our son through his process. And so this is why when I was telling the sharing our story last month, all of the timing issues, like writing the letter, giving it to my husband, all of those things in God's timing were timed perfectly. And when I tell you we
Mm-hmm.
went up to the wire, we went up to the wire. We had no
Mm-hmm.
idea. I mean, who would have known that that would have been the time, other than God, that that would have been the time that our son needed us the most. And we're so grateful that that we were willing to listen and that we were malleable in the hands of God enough that when our son, kind of went off the rails, we were able to form like a united front to help him. Because
Which is
baby, he needed all of
mhm.
us. He needed me, his daddy, his auntie, his grand. He needed everybody.
Right. Right. And was that so that was 2014. So that he was 16 at the time, I imagine, if this is your eldest.
He was yeah, he was like 16, 15, 16. Uh-huh. Yep, during that time
Uh-huh.
period.
So would you
Mhm.
mind sharing like what was happening at the time? Because all of us here have our different stories, but they're all very similar. And so I'd love to
Mhm.
understand your story. We have heard all about your husband and all of that incredible
Mhm.
journey.
Mhm.
So share what was happening and how did you come together to help him in his
Okay,
process?
so our son has always been a handful. So
Mm-hmm.
he's always been kind of he's a boy, so he was, into a lot of things and all of that. And even in the womb, like it was so funny. I had like a textbook pregnancy. Everything was perfect. Everything was good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just before like a couple of days before I went into labor, I literally felt him. It felt like he was like digging a hole of China or something. He was spinning
Mm-hmm.
and I felt him spinning. I was like, what is happening? I was at work. I was like, oh my God, don't let me have this baby at this desk. It was my first baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous. I don't know how any of this works. So anyway, I was scheduled to be a regular delivery, and his delivery was an emergency C-section because they found out
Mm-hmm.
that like that spinning was him spinning and he got his cord wrapped around his neck like
Wow.
3 times. So going into distress and all of that. So fast forward, he was always, just an active little baby, all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
He was the cutest little thing. C-section babies are cute. Okay. C-section.
I had
They
two of them, so I know they do come out cute. Hmm.
And so he was coddled, and
Hmm.
oh, my mom was like, "Y'all are just gonna go broke because we didn't want him to be wet. His diaper every time he messed up a diaper, it was like, oh my gosh." So he was the golden child. Okay, so he had everything, everyone's attention, and all of that. So when he started school, it was the whole like he's in daycare, he's running around and at that school environment, he sits at a desk, so the teachers are like, oh, he's all over the place, he's this, he's that, we need to get him under control. I'm like, this is my first child, so I'm learning like everybody else. So when we got to about second or third grade, this is one of the things that you have to learn to advocate for your own children. You have to learn to understand who your
Mhm.
children are. And I knew our son knew how to act in church. I knew he knew how to, sorry about that. I knew he knew how
Okay.
to act in different environments. So in school, it's like I don't even want to sit at my desk all the time. So
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
like, he's a child. So I never forget. This is when things start. I'm like, okay, I've really got to pay attention to him and pay attention to he was in public school at the time. And so it was just a lot of things new to me because my siblings and I, we all went to private schools. So it was a whole different dynamic for me. So I'm trying to learn, like the system and all of that. So I'll never forget, this was his second or third grade teacher, and she wanted to meet with me because he was sort of rambunctious. This is
Mhm.
what she said to me, and I was like, something's not right. She said, have you ever considered putting your child on Ritalin? I was like, absolutely not. And she said, well,
Mhm.
maybe just half a pill. You can talk to your pediatrician and maybe just half a pill so that he'll calm down. And I was like,
And this is the
I
teacher telling you this.
the
Mhm.
teacher. I'm like,
Mhm.
that was my point exactly. You are a teacher. You're not a medical professional. You are
Right.
not my pediatrician. So
Mhm.
I was at this point, I was like, I just don't even understand the medication part, or whatever. So anyway,
Mhm.
fast forward, he was a handful. I'm not lying to you, but it was, I said, well, I guess we just gonna all have a miserable year because I'm not putting him on drugs just to make your day better. We just gonna all have to
Right.
fight through this. So needless to say, that conversation didn't go over very well. So then she had the audacity to ask me. She said, because I watch a lot of Snap, I watch a lot of those like murder mystery shows and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And she
Mhm.
said something like, "Does he kill small animals?" I said, "Ma'am,
What?
what are your implications?"
What?
Like she's trying to make them.
Mhm.
I was
Right.
like, he loves animals. I was like, what are you talking about? So anyway, there during this time period, like this was developing. And so um it was from like second grade until about sixth or seventh grade. He was, he was
10,000 steps a day,
oh,
and
I'm
I think
so
everything will be
sorry.
more
No
than beautiful.
problem.
Oh my gosh. My husband, I'm sorry.
No
Gotta see what
worries.
this
Things
says.
happen.
So
No problem at all.
Hold on one
need to
second.
call.
Okay.
Okay. Uh-oh. Hold on.
No worries.
Oops.
Things happen, and it's no problem at all.
Apologize. Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly. Yes. Mhm.
Okay, good. My speaker on my oh goodness. Okay. Hold on one
We
second.
can still hear you, so that's
Okay,
what
good, good,
matters.
good.
And
Okay,
hopefully, we'll
so
see your beautiful face in a moment.
I'll be back soon. So
Okay.
so
You were.
anyway,
Mhm.
from that point until about sixth or seventh grade, that was the time when he was growing. He was growing. He
Mhm.
was actually, kind of he was able we were able to handle him, if you will, because he was,
Right.
he was smaller. He
Still
was
young. Uh huh.
able
Mhm.
to, we were able to discipline him and all of those things. But as he began to get bigger, the discipline became more difficult because, he was growing. He was, so,
Mhm.
you can handle like little, the toddlers and the elementary school children, but as he began to get older, he started to become more defiant. And so with
Mhm.
that being said, he got kicked out of his middle school, and then we put him into what do you call it, an all military school. And so we
Mm-hmm.
were like, okay, the military school is what he needs. This is gonna, give him the discipline that he needs and all of that. Child, he got kicked out of the military schools.
Oh my.
My God. So he got kicked out of military school, and then we
Mm,
ended up putting him into an alternative school. And
mm-hmm.
so from there, like everything just really started to devolve even more, different friends, different
Mm-hmm.
relationships and things like that. And so prior to that, he had like we were able to air quote manage it because his father was time enough for him, and all of that. But it got to the point where it just became we couldn't control him. We could not control him, and that in and of itself wreaked a lot of havoc in our home. And so the earlier stages of his, so he was never official, and this was the problem, is that unfortunately I really wanted him to have a diagnosis so that I would know what we were dealing with. I wanted him to,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be something so that we would know how to air quote attack it or deal with it or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So we
Mm-hmm.
went through the IEP, was it the
Yep.
testing and all of that to
For
see if
like a
he had an
504 and all that.
IEP, to see
Mm-hmm.
if he could get in. Child, we sat at that. And so we did the testing and everything. And so I'm waiting for the results. And I'm like, he just needs an individual, a plan. He needs this. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. and Miss Johnson, he's fine. Like, there's absolutely, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Are you serious?
Yeah.
So we had to figure it out. And that was that was the journey.
Right. And I'm wondering, because when you said
Oh,
all of
I
that was
cannot
happening,
hear you. Is it me
you
or
can't hear me? I think I'm hoping it's you. I can hear you just fine.
hold
Let's
on one
see.
second. I cannot.
Okay. It looks like your camera is on and your
Bear with me
microphone's
one
on.
minute. I'm trying to
Take your
get
time.
my.
No problem.
Hold on one second.
Take your time. A couple people just joined. We're waiting for Alycia, who's having just a little technical difficulty. And
Okay, can you hear me now?
we can hear you
I
perfectly.
cannot
Yes.
hear
And we
you.
see
I
your
can't
picture.
hear.
You can't hear me? Let's see. Uh,
Okay.
it says something like
We'll
EOS.
we'll be right back. I guess this is
Okay. There you are. I see you now. Can you hear me now?
oh my goodness. Okay, let me grab my headphones and see if that works.
Okay.
I don't know what is happening.
No problem.
I guess this is a message that we really need to get out in the the technical difficulties.
Yep, I had some this morning as well, but it's no problem. We're going to take a moment. We can just breathe, take a silent moment. It's all good.
Kelly, this is Vicky. Good morning. Wow,
Hey, good
while we're waiting on
morning.
Alicia,
Good morning.
I think what I am also feeling at the moment listening to her story is how important it is for us to trust our intuition as parents
That's right.
and work in tandem with support
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and build teams to surround our
Mm-hmm.
children. I'm so excited about
Mm-hmm.
hearing the unfolding of Alicia's journey with her son,
Okay.
with two grandsons, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
really, really paying attention. And that's what I'm hearing Alicia say to us is
Mm-hmm.
it's imperative that we pay attention and then be able to
Mm-hmm.
process and filter the data that's given back to us. You back, Alicia?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Woo!
All right.
All right,
Awesome.
one monkey don't stop no show. We're gonna get this going. Okay, now,
So
thank
just
you,
thank you for where you are thus far. So you can continue. I just wanted to
thank you.
jump in with that reflection so far.
No,
This is
that
all.
was great. It
Okay,
was, and that was great. Dr. Vicky is always so right on time. She was saying, as you were getting your technology back, that it's important for us to really be in tune with our children and work with in tandem with people that are giving us advice. And sometimes the advice is not right. I will say that. In our case, so many people were like, oh, he needs to go to a wilderness program. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. And it really, in hindsight, I don't think that advice necessarily was correct. But similarly, our eldest was really defiant, really defiant, and it was challenging. And I wanted to ask you about during that time period, was that the time period that you and your husband were going through that journey, that 10-year journey? So
Mm-hmm.
that was really what all of that was about. Is that correct? It,
It was, but we laugh now because he's, we're
Mhm.
all in a different space. And so when he goes, I say, boy, you were off the hook. He was like, so were y'all. Like we were all
Right,
And our
right.
daughter is like, our daughter, you cannot convince our daughter she's not the only sane one in the household because she's the only one that really didn't have any air quote drama. And
Uh-huh.
so that was the thing where we had to realize that, your children absorb the energy differently. And so,
Mhm.
whereas our daughter would just be like, she could separate
Mm.
herself from me, like they're crazy. Let me go in my room, do my thing. Let me do my little cheer, my little Girl Scouts, my little
Mhm.
this or whatever. So she would, just kind of self isolate and do all of those things. But our son was
Yes.
more sensitive, and so he's absorbing a lot of those things that I didn't at that time when I first had him. I didn't know a lot about being an empath. I didn't know a lot about emotional intelligence. I didn't know a lot about any of those things, and so
Mhm.
growing up, our parents are like, suck it up. You're gonna be all right. I'll give you something to cry about.
Mhm.
That whole thing. So
Mhm.
this whole generation, I'm like, y'all are different. It's just like my mama would send me outside, play, whatever. And this was just a whole different dynamic. And our children were exposed to a lot more of our personal, you know, dysfunction than we were as children. Because, like I said, we were always outside.
Right.
We would come in, do your
Mhm.
homework, take your bath, do whatever you need to do. But being under your parents like that wasn't even,
Mhm.
heard of. So they were exposed to, if I'm mad with their dad or their dad is mad with me or this, that, and the other. And then my husband was dealing with his issues of not knowing who his father was. We're dealing with the infidelity. We're dealing with the financial issues. And that's a lot,
Mhm.
to be exposed to as a child and not having the language, not having
Right.
the emotional maturity. Heck, I was having a hard time dealing with it, and I'm the
You
adult.
were
So,
dealing right with all the infidelities, but
right.
and so that energy, talk about energy and how that energy gets absorbed,
Mm-hmm,
especially if you're dealing with trauma or problems in the household or even lack of communication. Because I feel like you said you wrote this journal to
mm-hmm,
your husband that ended up being like this thick.
mm-hmm,
And during that time, there was not a lot of communication. Is that
mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah,
yeah, no
we were.
communication.
Yeah, there's anger, there's arguments there. As far as like healthy
Hmm.
communication, there was none. And then, I'm on my spiritual journey. I'm trying to figure
Yes.
things out. And so it was just a very confusing time. And then you have to understand children are also growing up hormonally. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to,
Hmm.
sort through a lot of issues. So that was also something that we were navigating as well. And so it was a very hard time in the sense that we were trying to figure it out. But the
Yes.
problem is that when that opportunity to figure it out as a family is taken away from you, in the sense that now there are outside influences and you have other voices, you have other people, you have
Hmm.
other. And so it got to the point, like, when your children are small, you have the option of taking them to people's houses. You get to meet the
Hmm.
parents. There's that opportunity there. But once, especially because we're like in an area where, there's public transportation. we're not home 24/7. So your children have more freedom than you would like them to have. When we were growing up, we were out in the country. Like you had your neighbor was like miles away. Like you're not going to be able to go like
Mm,
right next door or whatever. But it's a neighborhood school. There are children that live in the neighborhood. So our son was exposed to a lot of different family dynamics. And so
mhm,
because of that, that is where I talk a lot about comparison. Comparison kills. Comparison is very damaging. So in his young mind, he's trying to sort things out and figure things out, and our family isn't the
mm,
family that he wants our family to be, and then this family over here, they let them do whatever. The mom smokes with them. The mom is what is
mhm.
happening here? And we were
Yeah.
not, and that was the most frustrating part, is that I was at a disadvantage because that's not how I was raised. I mean, I had to learn a lot of this stuff. I'm like, how do you even find these people? I don't even know.
Mhm.
Like at one point in time, I'll never forget, our son had called me. He got into a little situation. He was like, come pick me up. And as a mom, you're gonna, whatever.
Yeah.
If it's your baby, you're gonna go get him or whatever. So I
Mhm.
gave my husband the address. He's like, you going over there? I was like, I don't even know. He said, don't get out of your car. Keep the doors locked. I was like, what is happening? So I go to pick my son up. It's like this alley. I'm like, look, I was like, is that a
Wow.
crackhead? I'm like, what is happening here?
What?
So he had, when I tell you, he had gone off the rails. He had literally
Mhm.
gone off the rails. But see, the thing is that everyone has a different journey. So his going
Yes.
off the rails for us may have been a cakewalk for somebody else. Oh, that's all he's doing that. But in our
Mhm.
household, that was pure dysfunction. Like I don't even know
Mhm.
where this is going. So you as the parent, you have to understand what your standards are. You have to understand what the expectations are in this household, and you have to monitor yourselves accordingly. So for me and my husband, we're like, this is going to devolve into something that we're not going to even be able to handle. Like I'm coming from a background, my sister and brother, like my sister's like Miss Ivy League. I mean, she's working, doing her thing. My brother's like, VP of this. My uncle's
Mhm.
like Justice Department. I said, I don't even know how to do this, right? And so our
Mhm.
son had people thinking we were like literal crackheads. Like when people would
Mm.
meet us, they'd be like, you're his parents? And we're like,
Wow.
yeah. And so he had, it was, we would come home in the evenings. One evening we came home. It was after one of my office Christmas parties. And there was a note on my door from PG, the police department.
Mhm.
Your son has been taken to, whatever hospital
Mhm.
they took him to, because of, some choices that he had made, and we had to
Mhm.
go and pick him up. So it was things like that that were destroying our home. But
Right.
the problem is that a lot of times people will look at your situation, look at, who you are, the things that you do, where you live, where you work, all of these things, and assume that you don't have problems, or
Right.
assume that everything should be okay, or assume that, it's it's not that big of a deal. But
Right.
this is why it's so important for you to have a relationship with heaven, because if it concerns you, it concerns heaven. And our
Mhm.
son was our responsibility. Heaven has given each and every one of us a responsibility when it comes to our children, and it's our responsibility to kind of see them through. And so,
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple of things. So, first of all, thank you for sharing so vulnerably and openly.
mhm.
One thing you said about silence and around your household, in your household, there was arguing, there was, fussing and fighting, but there was not communication. and conversation. And I find that, I think, so true in many of our households, unfortunately, And so I want to talk about that because there's a cost to silence. And you just shared that cost to silence. And I want to understand when you and your husband did reconnect after that 10-year journey, how did you create a space for communication and or reopen a space for communication from that space of silence and trauma?
So my husband and I, we had to learn how to communicate with each other.
Yes.
So there was a
Hmm.
relearning of what our communication style was. And now that, in addition to creating a safe space for our children, that's where our son kind of got lost in the process
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
he didn't have the opportunity because unfortunately, because of our dysfunction, most of our communication with them was, why did you do this? You should know better.
Yes.
It was just a lot of attacking, a lot of
Hmm.
arguing, a lot of just what it's so cliche, but hurt people, and
That's right.
my husband was dealing with not knowing who his father was. So there was a lot of that too. It was the weirdest thing. It was almost like resentment for my
Hmm.
son having my husband always said, like, one of the reasons that my husband, in the beginning, he was like, I stayed because I didn't want my children growing up without knowing who their father was. But my husband
Okay.
was present and absent all at the same time. I was like, you're
Oh, say
here, but
that again.
he was present and absent all at the same time. I'm like, you're
Yep.
here just for the sake of
Hmm.
saying that the kids have a father here, but you're not here. You're angry with them. Like it was almost like he was angry with our son for having him there, but not being who our son needed him to be. So it was really confusing.
Right. And
Go ahead.
sometimes we as women do that too. Like I look at myself and all those years when the boys were teenagers and so much unhappiness, yet the big smile on the face and looking like everything was great. And what I did was I poured myself into my work. So I was in my office 24/7, just to avoid, and there was no communication. So the boys didn't learn how to communicate because they didn't see that, with us for similar types of reasons. So I get that. It's so important. So you got back together, you
Mm-hmm.
worked through it, and then you started working on your communication after you built your relationship and your communication with your husband, the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you
Mm-hmm.
had a united front. Is that right?
Right. And so,
Okay.
we realized initially that once our son, because we asked our son, there were signs and things like that. Our son probably started taking drugs probably around 12, 13 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, and that was during a time period, like mentally, they're developing. And so that was a very interesting time period simply because, how can I put it? Trying to get him help while
Mm-hmm.
he's air quotes self-medicating, not knowing what he's doing and things like that. So his choices. I'm no medical professional. I'm no chemist. I don't put no drugs together. But this weed today is different than that weed back in the day. I'm sorry. This is
Mm-hmm.
some different. This
Mm-hmm.
stuff is different. This is
It
not.
is. We've had
This.
nurses on and
Oh,
doctors
okay.
talking about that.
Yeah,
It's very
this.
true.
Yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
different. This stuff is different. So, um, with that being said, a lot of his choices, I'm sure, were um drug induced. Like a lot of the things that he did, he just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't in a clear mind. So he would make a lot of choices that were sometimes the consequences, he would escape them, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't. So it had gotten to the point where we literally could not control him, and the household was a prison. It had become a
Mm-hmm.
war zone simply because if you do something to your child, you going to jail. If then we had
Mm-hmm.
our daughter was here as well. So we're trying to navigate, two different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
She's playing lacrosse, she's in private school, she's doing, so we're trying to make it normal for her. And then over here, and so it was a crazy
Wow.
balancing act that we were not doing very well. So it got to the point where he was we had the cops coming to our house at least at one point like once a month.
Wow.
It was a big spectacle. Like, they would come in and Bowie would come deep. Okay. They come about 4 or 5 cars deep. Okay. Like sirens.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. And so during that time period, I began to realize that there was something special here, like spiritually, because
Yes.
every time the cops would come, God would send the right ones. Like these were
Mm-hmm.
the cops that were compassionate. These were the cops
Yes.
that were like, Miss Johnson, let me pull you to the side. Miss Johnson, you don't want to send him to a detention center. Miss Johnson,
Right.
we'll give you I can give you 48 hours. We'll write it up so he can go to the psych ward, but don't do it. Like every time heaven kept showing me how
Mm-hmm.
he was protected. Like this is
Yes.
bigger than what you think it is. And so we got to the point where there were, there was mandated psych treatment. He had to go to
Mm-hmm.
a counselor. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
during that time period that he was assigned a counselor. And this is when it got real. Like all of the other stuff was just behavior things, like you got to deal with it as a parent. But
Mm-hmm.
we were there, and I'll never forget, because I was like, okay, we're going to get the help that we need now, because the counselor, we're going to knock it out. We're going to do what we need to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I didn't want him on medication simply because I knew he was still like doing drugs and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm not a medical professional, but I know you don't need to mix all of this stuff together,
Mm-hmm.
because they say you'll have suicidal ideations, you'll have all of these things. And so, but at that age, he was like 16 going on 17, so he could decide for himself. I learned a whole lot. I didn't know that my rights were diminishing, at certain points. So he decided that he wanted to take the medication, which was just
Mm-hmm.
not a good move, but he wasn't following the doctor's instructions. And so we went into a session one day, and she said, Miss Johnson, and the director was in there with her, and I was like, this ain't good. And so she said, I'm going to have to release your son because he's not compliant. It was just a whole lot of things he wasn't doing. And so when I tell you, my heart just sank, because I was like, I don't even know what to do at this point,
Mm-hmm.
because if a professional can't help me, then you know what. So this is how, in grand God style, this is why you can never give up on your children. You can never give in to what you think that you see. So she said, I can't help him. And so the director came in, and he said, I guess they have to give you like an alternative or something. So he gave us a plan B. And so he said, well, listen, we can't help you here, but here's the number to social services. Here, he gave me all these numbers, right? And so
That's
he
good.
knew at that point, because our son was like almost 17 at this point. And so he knew
Mm-hmm.
that the chances of him getting the help that he needed was like none, like zero, zilch,
Mm-hmm.
nada. But he had to do that to, I guess, clear his conscience. And so God was like, take the information and do what I tell you to do. See, a lot of times when we are approaching situations with our children, we do everything that we know to do. And once you have maxed out of that, then you have to do what God tells you to do. And
That's right.
so up until that point, I had done everything I had known to do, but it was bigger than me. So I truly had to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where, when the Bible teaches us that there's certain things, like there's certain things that you won't understand without fasting and prayer. Like this is
Mhm.
where fasting and prayer took on a whole nother level. Like I had to fast, I had to pray just so that I could hear what heaven needed me to hear specifically for my
Mhm.
son. But the key is that you have to hear and do what God tells you to do. So this was where it got really dicey because when the administrator gave me that information, it was a number and they said call this number, so I called the number and it was to social services. So I called social services and there was a woman that I guess the whoever it was that answered the phone, and you could tell she had been there for a minute, and she said, baby, she said, what's his birthday? And I gave her his birthday. You really want me to put this through? Because, baby, I've been working here for years, and social workers will sit on this case for 2 years just so they won't have to deal with him because he was about to turn 18. So after 18, they
Oh,
wouldn't have to
wow.
do
Hmm.
anything. And so I
Hmm.
was just getting ready to hang up the phone and say, well, she's probably right because she's been doing this. And God said, what did I say? I
Mm.
said, you sure right. So I said, no, ma'am. I said, just put the call through. I'll deal with it from there. That
Mhm.
moment, I put the call through. It went to a voicemail. I left a voicemail explaining the scenario. And about 3 hours later, I got a call from a social worker that said, Miss Johnson, I see the date of your son's birth, and this is high priority for me. I said, what?
Wow.
I
What
said,
a
what?
blessing.
She said, yeah,
Hmm.
she said, I will. And this, I don't know how many social workers are on here, but baby, a good social worker is a gift from God.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
This social worker was literally an
Hmm.
angel.
Hmm.
This was prior to this. Like I said, I was at wit's end because he was punching holes in walls. He and my husband were fighting. Like we had come to blows. He had even, like, he had attacked me. Like he had kicked me. It was just ugly. It was just, and I didn't want him to do anything to our daughter. And so
Hmm.
all of those things. So I'll never forget. One day I was picking my son up from school. I mean, my daughter up from school, and I was on BW Parkway, and she was in school in Laurel. And so from the point I got on BW Parkway to the Laurel exit, God dropped a prayer in my spirit, and it was, God, send our son an angel disguised as a human
Hmm.
to help him through the process. And I kept repeating that prayer until I got to the exit. And when I got to the exit, there was a car to my right, and there was a placard on the driver's side door. And it said, human disguised as a responsible adult. And that just
Wow.
lit me up. Like God was like, he's going to be okay. I'm
Okay,
sending
that's right.
you an angel. And those social workers were
And
angels.
angels. I
Angels.
love that. And that was all after military school. I want to, there's someone that said, can you go back to what happened with school after military school? So was all of that after
No,
military
he got
school?
kicked out of military school. He was in
Right.
military school for about a year. Yeah, that was after military school. He got kicked
All
out.
of that happened.
Yeah, he was
And
at this point, he was in alternative school. And this is the crazy part. He got kicked out of alternative school too. How you get kicked out of alternative school?
I,
I thought that
yeah.
was like where they, what I'm saying?
Yeah, when they don't want to go, they don't want to go. But somehow God works it out. I love that story and the angels of the social workers and what the power of what you said about listening to God. It's really listening. And then you said, and then doing, acting on what is being told to you. So I want to make sure before we run out of time, you're so phenomenal. I know somebody may have a question. Yes, I see somebody has a hand up. Let me see who this is. Please feel free to come off of mute. Is that Nikki? Good
Yes,
morning.
it is. Good morning. Good day, everyone. Oh my goodness. Thank you for this. This Alicia, Kelly, I heard so much identification in what you shared this morning. I mean, my son was I don't he was defiant from little, I'm talking little. But it was like, you charge it off too. He's a boy. He's a little rambunctious. He was my first child. You happy you got a boy and you just doing your thing. And I was raising him with my ex-husband who wasn't his biological father. So he was kind of like in it, but a hands off. He not going to discipline him, but he's going to take him everywhere. He's going to buy him everything. He was, present in that way. And he got to then I got a divorce, a separation, and it was like the man divorced the boy. So here, this was the only man father he knew, and then he gets like this divorce from us both. And I said, well, somebody gonna help me raise this boy. So I go live next to where the biological father was, who was never involved. And so it was like he was less involved now that we lived closer to him. And that was 6,000 miles from where we live now. And, doing this, what they call a geographical, in recovery, you thinking that that's gonna make it better. And he started using drugs in that same town, with these rich kids going to school, driving Maseratis, and this boy was getting high, probably around 13, 14 years old. And so something you said, because that went on for another 10 plus years, right? There were times I didn't even know, right? I didn't know it was progressively getting worse. And when you said don't give up on your child, there's something someone else said about listening to the spirit within. Like there's a voice, there's something inside. My friend was like, you need to send him, you need to send him. I was like, send him where? I'm not sending him to a father who didn't want the responsibility. I tried military school. That wasn't my thing because I knew what military school did to my cousin who ended up on drugs for 20, 30 years. Like, I just was like, there's got to be another way, God. So I kept him close to me. Like, what did that look like? It was painful. It was disgusting. It was ugly. It was uncomfortable. It was not a pleasant experience. And then one day, God spoke to him. I just kept praying. Everybody was like, you just got to pray. I said, okay, I'm going to wait for this prayer to come through because where is this God? Because this boy is a mess. And a year ago, he checked himself into treatment after about 4 or 5 times. And I'm grateful to say right now in this moment that he is drug and alcohol free. And I couldn't see that 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I thought this was going to be my life. I was going to have this addict son for now until now. Of course, we know this thing is one day at a time, but I am telling you, he's like, Ma, I don't want to be one of those old dudes coming in the rooms, talking about they got one day clean. Like I said, well, don't judge, but I was doing the comparison thing. I was like, other people were highlighting their children, they going to college, their sons got this job, they're doing this. And I'm like scared, ashamed, and embarrassed. Like, how could I, miseducated, at 1, 2, 3, how could my son, right, my perfect boy, end up basically on Skid Row, with Gucci shoes, and it was like, I could not have seen that. But God had to intervene because there was nothing that we could do. And so, to your point, those human angels were walking beside him, following him. I mean, he didn't have a record, with the police. Like, so many things could have been his journey, and they weren't. And it's God. So thank you for sharing that story. And it is our madness that contributes to it. A lot of times we don't want to acknowledge and own up to the fact that we all come in here sick, trying to sick people, trying to raise sick people. Now, that's like impossible, but we do it anyway when we have children, and we do the best that we can with what we know and with what we don't know. So thank you,
That's right.
Kelli, for bringing this conversation, and thank you for sharing yours so freely.
Thank you, Nikki, for sharing. Alycia, do you want to comment on that? Because, in your bio, just you talk about in God's economy, nothing is ever wasted. And what Nikki just shared feels like that. And I wanted to ask you, what does that mean, God's economy? And how can we all
Oh,
adopt that as a way of
y'all.
living?
Oh Lord, this is like such a layered story, but nothing is wasted in the
We're
sense
hearing
that,
some background noise for a second, Alycia.
oops, I think someone's unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's start again.
Okay.
Thank you.
You see them?
I think it's
I see it. Stand by. I
yeah,
fixed it.
there we go. So nothing is wasted. So the beautiful part is that um okay, I'm gonna make this as quick as possible. So when we were going through social services, okay, so the
Mhm.
program that we were trying to get our son in took 2.5 years normally, right? We had 2.5 months to do the process. So the social worker asked me, and this was so powerful because we had to go to court. We had to do like a voluntary placement with our son to do that. That was very, very difficult. And
Mhm.
so this was during the time when our son had been admitted to the hospital. And so in order to get him into this program, the social worker was like, Miss Johnson, do you trust me? And I was like, you're all I have. Yes, I trust you. And he kept asking me explicitly, do you trust me? I said, yes, I truly believe that God has sent you. So he said, you've got to do everything I tell you to do. I said, okay. And so he said, when they call you and tell you that your son is ready to be picked up from the hospital, you refuse to get him. I said, I got to do what? And he said, yeah, you have to refuse to get him. So that crushed me. So I had to let them know I wasn't going to get him. And so when when I did that, he said, because then we had a meeting with all of the big people, right? And so it was in that meeting that we did everything that we were supposed to do. All of the forms had been filled out. I followed everything to the T. I was like, okay, we're good now. So we get to the parking lot and his face, his expression changed. And he said, now we need an act of God. I said, what the heck? I said, we need an act of God.
Wow.
He said, do you know anyone in politics? I said, do I know anyone in politics? Dude, I'm just learning this system. So he says, we're going to literally need, in order for him, because see, when he did get out of the hospital, if this didn't work out, there would be hell to pay, okay? Because I refused to
Mhm.
pick. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, right? And so he said, you're going to need someone bigger than me to make this call. So I said, I don't know. So I got back to work. I'm shaking like a leaf. I pull up on the internet, like our county people, and I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
even know these people. I don't even know if I voted. Did I even vote? I'm trying to, like, can they pull up my record and see if I voted? And so this is how powerful God is. Nothing is wasted in God's economy. I called my husband. So I ran him, ran through everything. I said, Mike, we need somebody to make a call. I said, I don't even know who our council person is. I don't know any of these people. And so I was reading down the names. I said, this person and this person and this person and this person. And then he said, back up. What was that name? And I read the name. He said, then he gave him his childhood name. He was like, Ooga Boogie, whatever his childhood name was. I said, what? He said, I know him. I said, you know him? He said, yeah. Let me see what I can do. Child, they
Wow.
hadn't really talked to anything. They were like little school bus buddies, okay?
Mhm.
He reached out to that person on Facebook. That's the only information he had. And luckily, the person saw the message, reached back out to him that day, and my
Wow.
husband explained everything that was going on. He said, dude, I can't make no promises, but I'll do what I can. He said, but as a matter of fact, the person that we needed to get in contact with that we did not even know, he said, I have a meeting with her today. And he said, I
Wow.
will share with her what you've given to me.
Wow.
Kelli,
That's
when
amazing.
that afternoon, the social worker called me. He said, who are you, Miss
Mm.
Johnson? I said, wow, what happened? He said, we got the call today that
That's
this child
mm.
gave my child's whole government name. He has
Mm.
to be placed by 5 p.m. tomorrow, which was his 18th birthday.
What?
And he said, I said, so what does that mean? He said, if he's not placed,
Wow.
somebody's gonna lose their job. I
Oh,
said,
wow.
what? When I tell
That's
you they
amazing.
picked our son up,
Mm. Mm.
they picked our son up at
Mhm.
5 p.m. on March 19th.
Wow.
He turned 18 on March 20th.
Oh my God. Wow.
We serve a powerful God.
Yes,
If
we do.
you do not give up, God will not give up. If
That's
God
right.
has given you your child, God expects you to be the steward of that child. No matter
Mhm.
how difficult, no matter how inconvenient, no matter how scary, that is your responsibility. So there's so many other things that are tied into that.
Mm,
But when I say nothing is wasted, that
that's
relationship
right.
that my husband had with his little school bus buddy, playing the little
Mm,
drums, all of those things
mm.
for
Full
such
circle.
a time as this. God's timing is impeccable.
It's perfect. I love that story. What a priceless way to end our call this morning. So many hearts and people saying thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing that. God's timing is impeccable, and we don't give up. If we don't give up, God doesn't give up.
No, ma'am.
That is so powerful. Whew, this was a whole word. Thank you so much for being here. Again, Alycia, you're always such a joy and such a gift to all of us. And I wish we had another hour, but love you so much and appreciate you being here. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vicky, who will close us out in a prayer this morning. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alycia. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dee, for this community, this platform. And I'll just close today with what Alycia ended with, and that is God's timing is impeccable. You all have a powerful day. That's the answer. That's the solution. That's what somebody needed to hear today on this call. No matter how impossible it looks, God's timing is impeccable. See you next week, everybody. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you. Have a beautiful week. Bye.